everyone, hope you're doing well today. I don't edit videos, so I'm gonna try and not do too many takes. I just sort of speak and just go with it. I managed to watch the part 2 of the Oxygen documentary yesterday, and I've made notes this time as I was watching it to make sure I capture the things that stood out to me. So I've got them to decide here. If this is your first time seeing this, so I filmed the part 1 last week. I shared my thoughts on those after watching that. So this is a documentary that was done investigating the culture and the handling of sexual abuse within the Jehovah's Witness communities, and following some survivors of this as it happened to them while they were children. Now they're adults and they're seeking to get some sort of justice. They're speaking out, and some of the challenges that they've had with that as well. So from this one, there were 2 stories that really stood out to me, so highlighting 2 different things. And it's just more of the same shock. It's more of the same, oh my goodness, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe people let this happen. Who are these people? And so I'm just gonna share the things that stood out to me. So one of the cases was a lady who her abuse was done by her sister-in-law and a friend within their congregation. And if you have no history with witnesses, a congregation, I think I said this the last time as well, is like a little group of witnesses that are within an area. When I was growing up, I think we had anywhere between 60 to 100 people within a congregation. So this was someone within their congregation. These 2 adults at the time were married. Said one of them was a sister-in-law, and they were married to partners, and she was 15 when she was abused. As a 15-year-old, just sort of not really understanding what's going on. Because the thing is, when you grow up as a witness, at least this was my experience and a lot of what I've heard as well, you are isolated. You are isolated from people your age that are not part of the organization. And so the people that you end up basically being made, coerced, whatever, to be friends with are people that a lot of the times are older. That was my experience, and it looks like that was this lady's experience as well. So these grown people, one of them, I think she said the lady was at least 6 years older than her, and the man at least 12 years older than her. I think that's what she said. Anyway, 15-year-old, this happens. Absolutely feels dirty and disgusting, and thought, she didn't tell anyone about this, by the way. She kept this to herself, and she thought, I know what, I'm gonna get baptized, and when I get in that water and I come out, I'm gonna be clean, and maybe I'm not getting upset again. Goodness gracious. Okay, when I come out of that water, maybe just this hits too close to home. When I come out of that water, everything's going to be okay. She gets baptized. Of course, that's not how it works. So she still feels the same, and eventually she decides to speak to her parents, tell them what had happened to her. Basically, she was raped many times. They form a judicial committee, and there's 2 of them because, well, essentially they didn't deny it. And the elders, I made a note of some of these questions because it's absolutely disgusting. At the time she actually spoke up, she was about 17, and they're asking her questions like, did you enjoy it? Did you yell? Did you initiate it? This just goes to show how unqualified these people are to handle stuff like this. Why are these men who are clearly not trained, don't have the sensitivity to handle stuff like this? Those are the sort of questions they were asking her. It's mind-blowing. Fortunately now, I think in the last maybe few years, they have had a slight change of policy where you don't have to, well, someone who has been abused doesn't have to confront their abuser in like that face-to-face meeting, because that's just intimidating. So that's a slight positive change there. But obviously back then this was the case, so she had to face these people, confront them, and talk about what had happened to her. And they were taking notes and stuff like this. This is a long story here. Eventually, so those adults got disfellowshipped. She was given a public reproof. Now, if you have no history with the witnesses, this is a situation where it is announced publicly that basically you've done something wrong and you got some making up to do. Basically, they don't usually say the details of what has happened, but everyone knows that you've done something wrong. And essentially for her, they'd done that to her because they felt she kept the abuse to herself for too long. Strike two, people who absolutely do not understand how sensitive stuff like this works. So of course, when she walks into the Kingdom Hall, people are giving her funny looks and as if she doesn't feel bad enough already. At no point did they say, maybe let's go to the authorities, maybe let's give you some counselling, some therapist, someone to work through this. None of that whatsoever. Eventually going to the Kingdom Hall gets too difficult, all the murmuring and whispering and all of that, and she decides she just can't stand it anymore. She can't face it. She decides that she's going to stop going. The elders don't like that. They tell her parents what she has to come. She says she really can't face it. Guess what her parents do? Ask her to move out. She was still 17 at this point. She had to move out. If you are anything like the type of witness that most of us are, you really don't quite know how the world works, and to be turfed out like that at 17, that must have been really hard. Of course, she went off the rails because that is a traumatic thing to happen to anyone, more especially so when you're a child. It goes off the rails for a few years, eventually decides she wants to come back in, because again, that is something that happens to a lot of witnesses. Sometimes they feel like they have to go back. That is the only place they have to go to. She goes back, brand new congregation, tells her story all over again, and it was around this point that she manages to access some counselling. I'm not even sure how she came about that. I don't think this was something that they advised her to do. I think this was something she decided to do for herself. At around the age of 21, that's when she eventually could put a name to what it was that happened to her. Again, hit so close to home for me to realize that this was sexual abuse. That is what you went through. She told the elders everything again. They took a lot of detailed notes. At the counselling place, they tell her, well, this needs to be reported. You can still report this. The statute of limitations hasn't run out yet. You can still report this. She does this and tells the police officers, basically, these men, they took notes of everything. The records are there. You can find it. The elders get wind of this. And according to a man on the program who was a former elder, who said he was part of the body of elders in that congregation at the time. They rang the headquarters asking what to do. And according to him, they were asked to get a shredder and shred their notes. Yeah. You tell me where a loving, kind God fits into all of this when you're actively trying to cover up something that is just absolutely heartbreaking and horrific for this lady. So yeah, they basically shred their notes. And when the police came round to check, of course, there was nothing to see. He did... In the end, they had to settle for a bit of a slap on the wrist type of punishment for the man, the male abuser. The lady, according to her, was very sorry, and she felt like she was sufficiently sorry for that. The male abuser, she didn't feel got the punishment that he should have had. In court, all of the elders were saying what a wonderful person this man was. None of them backed up what she had told them over and over again, and they've taken notes for. Shocking. The second lady that caught my attention as well. This lady, I guess this special thing about her case and showing how high up this sickness, this basic lack of care for the well-being and safeguarding of children goes. This lady, apparently her dad came into the religion as an adult, and the person who actually converted him, spoke to him, brought him in was Stephen Lett. And Stephen Lett, if you don't know, is one of the 8 group of men called the governing body who are in charge of everything. They make the rules, they make the policies that all witnesses globally have to live by. So Stephen Lett is one of those men, and he personally brought this girl's father into the religion, studied with him, and so they had that sort of one-on-one connection there. So she was born from quite a young age, being in there. Her abuse happened when she was 5 years old. One of the families they had in their congregation there, her son had abused her. Now, this is so sad because initially her dad was doing the right things that a person would do. Straight away got onto the accused person, who very quickly admitted it, rang the police, rang a doctor to get his daughter checked out. So there's no doubt that this has happened. However, before the police could properly get involved, he rang the elders as well, because he absolutely believed that this was God's one true organization. So he rang them, and by the time they came round and basically warned him off, they refused to press charges. They didn't want to press charges anymore after the elders had been round and gave him a talking to, all about bringing reproach on Jehovah's name. That is so culty. The number of times I heard that, is it a clause? Is it a phrase? I don't know what you call it. Bringing reproach on Jehovah's name over and over and over again. It's like, it's loaded language, isn't it? That we all live with. Anyway, and that basically broke the man. The fact that he couldn't protect his daughter, he couldn't do what felt natural to him, which is get justice for his daughter. So he said, I believe Stephen Lett at this time was either already a member of the governing body or quite close to. And so because they had that personal connection, he felt he was going to write to him about what had happened, what had happened to his daughter, and give some suggestions on how to improve things. So he writes him a letter. This lady had the letter that she showed on the documentary as well, making suggestions that there should be mandatory reporting globally, which just makes sense. That perhaps a doctor or a lawyer could serve as the second witness, because if you haven't watched my part 1 video, they need a second witness for them to take a second witness or a confession to take allegation of an abuse seriously. Otherwise, they basically leave it. Perhaps maybe a doctor or a lawyer can serve as the second witness, people who can actually do something about it. Another suggestion at the time is you shouldn't be made to go in, week out, to sit in a room with the person that had abused you in the name of going to meetings. That was unfair. And he also highlighted that this was a sensitive matter, that the elders were not qualified to handle it. Explained all of that. 5-year-old daughter wrote this to Stephen Lett. Stephen Lett responded back, ignoring what it seemed like all of the suggestions that had been made, focused on the fact that he felt he had behaved with good Christian wisdom, the fact that, he didn't press charges, essentially happy that he had kept it in-house, just completely ignored the suggestions that had been made. And we have his personal signature as well on that letter. So right all the way to the very top, a 5-year-old had been abused. And it's like, he did say he's sorry to hear it, so he acknowledged that had happened, but then nothing. And because this man was still all the way mentally in, believing that must be the best way to handle it, if Stephen Lett says so, and this is a man that believes that he's going to rule in heaven, him and his mates, the 7 of them and 144,000 of them, whatever, absolutely believing that must be the right way to handle it. He lives it, but that absolutely broke him. And according to his daughter, that's when he started drinking. Because at that point, you're in conflict, aren't you? You're conflicted between what you know you have to do as a father to protect your child, versus this organization here that you believe is God's one and only organization, and it just conflicts, and you can't handle the conflict, and the man turns to drinking, to not think, and eventually alcoholism took him. He eventually killed him. So it's really sad, and really just brings to mind, yes, what happens to the survivors. Of course, that is the main thing, but the other people around them as well still suffer. And the sort of thing that it does to someone to hide stuff like that. I mean, for example, in the first lady that I was talking about that had abuse happen at 15, one of the abusers was her sister-in-law. The husband, so her brother, wasn't even told what the issue was, even though her parents knew. That's the kind of secrecy that we're dealing with. Of course, needless to say, the people in the congregation who have little children are not even told what's happening. So they don't know that they have to keep their children safe from these people. So those were the 2 things that really stood out to me, stories rather. Something else that I picked up on, this lady who her father was brought in by Stephen Lett. My son's in the background, if you can hear sneezing. She now has protest, and they had a protest. Peaceful protest. They weren't being violent or anything. They were just standing in front of a Kingdom Hall as people were going in for a memorial. Whatever you feel about those type of activism, that's neither here or there for me. But they were standing there, and the attendants, the speed at which they got the police to come and turf them out. Why can't they have that kind of speed when a child's been abused? Like literally, quickly, they're onto the police to come and move people that are just standing there off their property, but the child is abused and you ring the headquarters. What goes on in the mind of those people? Don't they have children? The police officers who came round, they were like, no, you absolutely have the right to be here. I mean, it's a public space, so you can stand there, and has the human decency to say, I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm really sorry to hear that. No such thing from the attendant's, I don't want to call him brother, even though that's what's on the tip of my tongue. He was like, well, if you have a grievance, this is not the place to talk about it. What is happening to the sensitivity of those people who are doing stuff like that? It's what this religion does to you. Like, you get the tunnel vision, you get desensitized to things that would normally make your heart stop, things that would normally make you want to care and take action and protect defenseless children. It kind of desensitizes that away from you, and you just compare and contrast the police officer versus the attendant, who is the person that's supposed to be, it was probably an elder or a ministerial servant, who knows, who is meant to be shepherding and nurturing. None of that. So to summarize, finish on some positive notes. So there continue to be leaked documents, and hopefully enough will get leaked at some point. There will be enough to really indict these organizations, specifically those 8 men on top, for their policies, the demonstrable harm that it's causing. The other thing as well in the US, I'm just looking at another positive thing. Last year, so in 2019, the statute of limitation got waived for a year, so that in the state of New York you could sue for sexual abuse that has happened to you as a child. And New York is like quite an important location for that as well, because that is where their headquarters are. That's a whole other thing, the amount of property and all of that. But anyway, that's where their headquarters are. So as at January of 2020, so last month, there had been over 1,300 lawsuits filed against the Jehovah's Witness organization, which is fantastic. Erwin Zolkin, if I'm saying his name correct, this is a lawyer that has been on the witnesses case for quite a few years. So he actually names the governing body in at least 2, if not more, of his lawsuits, which is fantastic. And I mean, I don't know what's going to come of it. Expect that there will be some more cases filed as well before that window shuts. So I can't wait to see what happened with those. So that's some positive thing to finish on. But again, it was a hard watch. But I gotta say, those women, they seem to, I mean, of course, I don't know what's happening deep down, but they seem to be trying to make something of themselves, because that's all you got to do. And it's just a shame for the ones that probably didn't get so lucky and didn't quite manage to recover from that and turn their lives around, who probably couldn't take it and didn't make it, who took their own lives, because that is something that can happen when you're violated in this way and you don't get justice, you don't get acknowledgement, you don't get people believing you or the space to even speak about what has happened to you. Yeah. Shame about those. I said I was going to finish on something positive, but there's no, yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Anyway, thank you for everyone that has been commenting on the last one. This might be a bit rambly, but I can't deal with editing just yet. Maybe at a later date. Have a good rest of the day, whatever time you're watching this, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.